Welcome everyone to the Palm Beach Poetry Festival. I'm so pleased to see all of you, and this is going to be a fabulous, fabulous evening we've all been looking forward to. Just a word or two about the original collage that we have out in the lobby being displayed that was done by local artist Bruce Hoagland, who is in many museums and in the collections of many serious collectors of art. And he was very kind enough to donate to the festival this original piece of art that he said we could then use on our program covers, our CD covers, and also we have giclée prints that are for sale in the bookstore. So just take a peek if you're interested. Come see us. The bookstore is open, of course, right after this reading for book signings, and that's right down the hall to the left. It is my really great pleasure to introduce this evening our presenter, Barbara Hamby, who will introduce Jane Hirshfield first, and then after Jane reads, we'll have a slight 5-minute break, and then Barbara will come back and introduce Tony Hoagland. Barbara Hamby is writer-in-residence at Florida State University. Her first full-length book, Delirium, won the Vassar Miller Prize, the Kate Tufts Discovery Award, and the Poetry Society of America's Norma Farber First Book Prize. Her second book, The Alphabet of Desire, won the New York University Prize for Poetry and was chosen by the New York Public Library as one of the 25 best books of 1999. Her third book, Babel, was chosen by Stephen Dunn for the 2003 AWP Donald Hall Prize. Her poems have appeared in Best American Poetry 2000, Pushcart Prizes 2001, the Paris Review, the Iowa Review, the Kenyon Review, and many other magazines and journals. She has won 3 fellowships from the Florida Arts Council and 1 from the National Endowment for the Arts. Ladies and gentlemen, my privilege and pleasure to present Barbara Hamby.
All writers feel like such losers that when you hear something like that, you always think, who's that about? It can't be me. I've long admired Jane Hirshfield's work, so when I met her last night, I was happy to find her as clear and open as her poems. We talked about our Buddhist training, hers in Zen and mine in Theravadan Buddhism, and I was delighted to learn she had edited the books of my teacher. It's a small world, especially where poetry and Buddhism intersect. In the past few weeks, I've been rereading Given Sugar, Given Salt, which was a finalist for the National Book Critics Circle. It's a book of quiet power, her language on the surface simple and transparent, but uncovering the mysteries that each of us face every minute. Who are we? What is this world? And how do we move through our time on Earth? Her limpid, sensuous language opens the door on a mind that is super attentive to the nuances of the moment, a snake whipping across the room like the emotions moving through a person's body. But as rich as her language is, I admire her silences nearly as much. I'm a poet who can barely stand to use a period, so I'm in awe of her end stops, stanzas that pause so we can take in the mysterious turns of her metaphors. One of my favorite poems is in the book is Apple. In just 17 lines, a day passes, nothing happens, but in the center of the poem, there is a volta, a turn, a hope rises and passes wrapped in a shawl, and then becomes an apple shared by old friends. One takes a bite, then the other. They do this until it is gone. And that hope becomes so complex, so fraught with longing and release that it resembles nothing more than the eruption of the human heart. Jane told me last night that she was going to read from her new book, After, newly published and available here for the first time, a special treat for us. I spent so much time on her poetry that I've not mentioned her other many accomplishments as translator, anthologist, essayist. I'm especially fond of her anthology of spiritual poetry by women, from a Sumerian princess from 2300 BC to Nelly Sachs, and the great 20th century Russian poets Anna Akhmatova and Marina Tsvetsayeva. She's won many awards, but it's her poetry that we're here to savor. I give you Jane Hirshfield.
I would like to start by thanking you all, everyone who's in this room for coming, my magnificent workshop students for your fabulous and energetic and brilliant company, Miles and the entire staff of the festival for making this possible for all of us, and to say, as others have been saying, what a privilege it is to be here with the array of stupendous fellow poets, and to have the Florida poetry community so present and visible in so many different ways. So thank you all. My students, I had been wavering about whether I was going to read only from the new book, which is utterly a terrifying thing to do. And my students gave me the answer, which was they started giving me requests from older work. So I'll start with older work and then move to some of the newer poems. And I suppose, luckily for me, one of the requests was a poem which I often do start readings with. And I never know whether to call it a love poem or an end of love poem or a poem of connection, because it is all those things. It's the earliest of my poems that I still read regularly. It goes back to 1982. So, For What Binds Us. There are names for what binds us. Strong forces, weak forces. Look around, you can see them. The skin that forms in a half-empty cup, nails rusting into the places they join, joints dovetailed on their own weight. The way things stay so solidly wherever they've been set down. And gravity, scientists say, is weak. And see how the flesh grows back across a wound with a great vehemence, more strong than the simple, untested surface before. There's a name for it on horses when it comes back darker and raised. Proud flesh. As all flesh is proud of its wounds, wears them as honors given out after battle, small triumphs pinned to the chest. And when two people have loved each other, see how it is like a scar between their bodies, stronger, darker, and proud. How the black cord makes of them a single fabric that nothing can tear or mend. And I thought, since this is a room full of mostly practicing poets, that I would read this next poem. It was written when I was being given a great deal of luxurious writing time at a place that the Rockefeller Foundation runs on Lake Como in Italy, in Bellagio, at their Center for Scholars and Artists. And it is so extraordinarily luxurious that the first week I was there, I felt absolutely guilty and couldn't write very well. Now, I may have also been jet-lagged, but this caused me to think hard about all of the writers who do not ever in their lives have such privilege, who write in places where they might not have access to electricity to write by, or implements to write with, or certainly any way to be published or translated. And I know that these people, amongst them, are those who are writing some of the most important poems to come to this earth, whether or not they are seen. So all of that went into this. The poet. She is working now in a room not unlike this one, the one where I write or you read. Her table is covered with paper, The light of the lamp would be tempered by a shade where the bulb's single harshness might dissolve. But it is not. She has taken it off. Her poems? I will never know them, though they are the ones I most need. Even the alphabet she writes in I cannot decipher. Her chair. Let us imagine whether it is leather or canvas, vinyl or wicker. Let her have a chair, her shadeless lamp, the table. Let one or two she loves be in the next room. Let the door be closed, the sleeping ones healthy. Let her have time and silence, enough paper to make mistakes and go on. This is a poem that for many years I never read, and then I began getting reports from people who said to me separately from different places over some span of time that during a period of great duress, this poem had helped them. And so I decided after the third or fourth or fifth time of hearing that maybe I should start reading the poem again. It takes its terrain in Greek mythology, but you do not have to remember any particular myth to hear the poem. Each moment a white bull steps shining into the world. If the gods bring to you a strange and frightening creature, accept the gift as if it were one you had chosen. Say the accustomed prayers, oil the hooves well, caress the small ears with praise. Have the new halter of woven silver embedded with jewels, spare no expense, pay what is asked when a gift arrives from the sea. Treat it as you yourself would be treated, brought speechless and naked into the court of a king. And when the request finally comes, do not hesitate even an instant. Stroke the white throat, the heavy trembling dewlaps you've come to believe were yours, and plunge in the knife. Not once did you enter the pasture without pause, without yourself trembling. That you came to love it, that was the gift. Let the envious gods take back what they can. One of my books, The Lives of the Heart, is full of poems which are basically recipes for getting through difficult times. And if one poem doesn't work, you just turn the page and try another. There are different strategies, different suggestions. So I'll read two of those. And the first of them is also a literal recipe, but I come by it honestly. I was a cook at Green's Restaurant for 3 years. And the only other thing you need to know about it is, most of you are probably familiar with this, but the title is an Italian term from music, da capo, and that appears at the end of a piece of music and is the instruction to go back and play it again from the start. Da capo. Take the used up heart like a pebble and throw it far out. Soon there is nothing left. Soon the last ripple exhausts itself in the weeds. Returning home, slice carrots, onions, celery. Glaze them in oil before adding the lentils, water, and herbs. Then the roasted chestnuts, a little pepper, the salt. Finish with goat cheese and parsley. Eat. You may do this, I tell you. It is permitted. Begin again the story of your life. So sometimes the only strategy possible during a long, dark spell is to grit your teeth and get through it. And so when you're thinking of stubbornness, what comes more to mind than a mule? And so this poem is called Mule Heart. On the days when the rest have failed you, let this much be yours. Flies, dust, an unnameable odor, the two waiting baskets. One for the lemons and passion, the other for all you have lost. Both empty, it will come to your shoulder, breathe slowly against your bare arm. If you offer it hay, it will eat. Offered nothing, it will stand as long as you ask. The little bells of the bridle will hang beside you quietly in the heat and the tree's thin shade. Do not let its sparse mane deceive you, or the way the left ear swivels into dream. This too is a gift of the gods, calm and complete. I made a vow quite some years ago now that I would not give any poetry readings that did not acknowledge the extraordinary suffering going on in the world right now. And there are many forms of that. There is, of course, the Iraq War, but there is also, in today's newspaper, Eritrea, Kathmandu, this endless promulgation of suffering and cruelty that we seem to be infinitely capable of. And so this poem goes back to the time of genocide in Rwanda, and I wrote the poem after having read something in the paper and gone to a dinner party and not said something. And I felt so terrible about not having said something that I wrote this poem as a kind of expiation and have been saying it ever since, on and off. So the poem is called Manners and then / Rwanda. They took the woman and tied to one arm a child, to the other arm a child, to one leg a child, to the other leg a child. You also read this in the paper, and threw them all in. No marks of damage, not one on the 5 bodies, which means, of course, that they drowned, which means, of course, that she knew. The river made its way from higher ground toward lower and carried them with decorum, the way a river does. It carries what it is given. And because in the night a border was crossed, what was given then was taken out with a pole. It may have been untied before being added to the tally sheet with others and given next to the quicklime and earth, but probably not. There it will likely stay, where it was carried. The last contact with anything living, a hand's continuing rising, almost a waving, almost a plea, letting go after rolling it in. The 2 beats of the fall almost gentle, a door being carefully opened, quietly closed. And though you too are sickened, as even the river is sickened, undrinkable now with the human heart, you also carry what you were given with decorum. Perhaps reminded later by something mentioned only in passing, a large family, a cat's toy of string. You stop smiling a moment soon. Across the table, someone notices but does not speak. You watch his question rise and seem to waver like a hand about to act, a hand about to change its mind, then drop politely away. This is one of the poems which Barbara mentioned in her introduction, The Envoy. One day in that room, a small rat. 2 days later, a snake, who, seeing me enter, whipped the long stripe of his body under the bed, then curled like a docile house pet. I don't know how either came or left. Later, the flashlight found nothing. For a year I watched as something, terror, happiness, grief, entered and then left my body, not knowing how it came in, not knowing how it went out. It hung where words could not reach it. It slept where light could not go. Its scent was neither snake nor rat, neither sensualist nor ascetic. There are openings in our lives of which we know nothing. Through them, the belled herds travel at will, long-legged and thirsty, covered with foreign dust. Sometimes there are subjects that you think you could never write a poem about in 10,000 years. You know someone could, but it's someone else. And then, much to your surprise, you go and write the thing. You go, oh, How interesting. So this was such a poem for me. If you'd asked me 5 minutes before I wrote it if I could write a poem on the subject of habit, I would have said, no, not, animals, give me animals. But anyhow, I did. So, habit. It has an animal in it, of course, somewhere. Habit. The shoes put on each time, left first, then right. The morning potion's teaspoon of sweetness stirred always for 7 circlings, no fewer, no more, into the cracked blue cup. Touching the pocket for wallet, for keys, before closing the door. How did we come to believe these small rituals promise that we are today the selves we yesterday knew, tomorrow will be? How intimate and unthinking, the way the toothbrush is shaken dry after use, the part we wash first in the bath. Which habits we learned from others and which are ours alone, we may never know. Unbearable to acknowledge how much they are themselves, our fated life. Open the traveling suitcase. There, the beloved red sweater, bright tangle of necklace, earrings of amber, each confirming, I chose these, I. But habit is different. It chooses. And we, its good horse, opening our mouths at even the sight of the bit. It's so rare for me to make people laugh, thank you. They're particularly precious when you're not often funny. So this is the last from the earlier books that I'll be reading. I'm astonishingly right on schedule. I'm exactly at the halfway point. So I live in Mill Valley, a town named after a mill that took all the redwood trees off Mount Tamalpais and sent them over the Golden Gate to rebuild San Francisco after the '06 earthquake and fire. And redwoods are interesting because they actually come back in a ring around the cut mother tree. And so Mill Valley 70 years ago was a very sunny town if you look at photographs, and now it's very shady because they have been returning. And this particular one is rather close to me. Tree. It is foolish to let a young redwood grow next to a house. Even in this one lifetime, you will have to choose. That great calm being, this clutter of soup pots and books. Already the first branch tips brush at the window. Softly, calmly, immensity taps at your life. So now we get to the scary part of the reading, the brand new. It's not like I've never read most of these poems ever. It's just that reading them in a bound book is entirely different. So there was quite a long gap of non-writing between finishing Given Sugar, Given Salt, and starting any new poem at all. And rather to my surprise, it worked out that first poem that I wrote became the first poem in this book. After long silence, politeness fades. A small anchovy gleam, leaving the upturned pot in the dish rack after the moon has wandered out of the window. One of the late freedoms there in the dark. The leftover soup put away as well. Distinctions matter. Whether a goat's quiet face should be called noble or indifferent. The difference between a right rigor and pride. The untranslatable thought must be the most precise. Yet words are not the end of thought. They are where it begins. This is the poem that I used to think would be the first poem in the book for a long time. Theology. If the flies did not hurry themselves to the window, they'd still die somewhere. Other creatures choose the other dimension, to slip into a thicket, swim into the shaded, undercut part of the stream. My dog would make her tennis ball disappear into just such a hollow, pushing it under the water with both paws, then dig for it furiously, wildly, until it popped up again. A game or a theology, I couldn't tell. The flies might well prefer the dawn-ribboned mouth of a trout, its crisp and speed, if they could get there, though they are not in truth that kind of fly, and preference is not given often in these matters. A border collie's preference is to do anything entirely, with the whole attention. This Simone Weil called prayer. And almost always her prayers were successful. The tennis ball could be summoned again to the surface. When a friend's new pound dog, diagnosed, distempered, doctored for weeks, crawled under the porch to die, my friend crawled after, pulled her out, said, "No!" as if to live were just a simple matter of training. The coy dog, startled, obeyed. Now trots out to greet my car when I come to visit. Only a firefly's evening blinking outside the window, this miraculous story, but everyone hurries to believe it. So my honey told me I should stop reading this poem because he says it's too complicated for people to follow on a hearing. So I'd be really grateful if just a few of you, not all of you, but maybe my workshop members can whisper to me tomorrow whether he's right or not. It's a poem in a form that I have subtitled. Many of the poems in this book are subtitled an assay. And that's a word which comes from chemistry and also the mining industry. So, for example, when a gold miner found a nugget of gold, they would take it to the assayer's office to see what it was made of. So basically it means to analyze something for what is in it and what strengths are they in relationship to each other. And all of the assays in this book are imaginative attempts to analyze their subject matter with the tools of poetry rather than chemistry. So what this one is analyzing is judgment, which practitioners of Buddhism have a lot of questions about their relationship to judgment because you're often told to drop it, and yet it's impossible to be a human being without having discrimination, and so it becomes this delicate thing to negotiate. The last thing you need to know about the poem is that it's talking to judgment, so it's an ode as well as an essay, and so the you of it is judgment. So to judgment and assay. So you're already thinking the beloved is right. You're thinking any poem that takes that much explanation, forget it. To judgment. You change a life as eating an artichoke changes the taste of whatever is eaten after. Yet you are not an artichoke, not a piano or cat, not objectively present at all. And what of you a cat possesses is essential, but narrow, to know if the distance between two things can be leapt. The piano, that good servant, has none of you in her at all. She lends herself to what asks. This has been my ambition as well. Yet a person who has you is like an iron spigot whose water comes from far-off mountain springs. Inexhaustible your confident pronouncements flow, coldly delicious. For if judgment hurts the teeth, it doesn't mind. Not judgment. Teeth pass. Pain passes. Judgment decrees what remains. The serene judgments of evolution, or the judgment of a boy king entering Persia. Burn it, he says, and it burns. And if a small tear swells the corner of one eye, it is only the smoke. It is no more to him than a beetle fleeing the flames of the village with her six-legged children. The biologist Haldane, in one of his tenderer moments, judged beetles especially loved by God because he had made so many. For judgment can be tender. I have seen you carry a fate to its end as softly as a retriever carries the quail. Yet however much I admire you at such moments, I cannot love you. You are too much in me. I've turned too many pages. Haven't got these memorized yet. You are too much in me, weighing without pity your own worth. When I have erased you from me entirely, disrobed of your measuring adjectives, stripped from my shoulders and hips each of your nouns, when the world is horsefly, coal barge, and dawn the color of winter butter, not beautiful, not cold, only the color of butter, then perhaps I will love you, helpless to not. As a newborn wolf is helpless, no choice but hunt the wolf milk, find it sweet. This essay is exploring sky. A hawk flies through it, carrying a still twisting snake twice the length of its body. Radiation, smoke, mosquitoes, the music of Mahler fly through it. The sky makes room, adjusting its airy shoulders. Sky doesn't age or remember, carries neither grudges nor hope. Every morning is new as the last one, uncreased as the not quite imaginable first. From the fate of thunderstorms, hailstorms, fog, sky learns no lesson, leaping through any window as soon as it's raised. In speech, furious or tender, it's still of passing sky the words are formed. Whatever sky proposes is out in the open. Clear even when not, sky offers no model, no mirror, cloudy or bright to the ordinary heart, which is secretive, rackety, domestic, harboring a wild uninterest in sky's disinterest. And so we look right past sky, by it, through it, to what also is moody and alters, erosive mountains, eclipsable moons, stars distant but deathbound. Vilnius. There was a possibility of going to Lithuania, but it didn't work out. All it did was produce a poem. Vilnius. For a long time, I keep the guidebooks out on the table. In the morning, drinking coffee, I see the spines. St. Petersburg, Vilnius, Vienna. Choices pondered, but not finally taken. Behind them, sometimes behind thick fog, the mountain. If you lived higher up on the mountain, I find myself thinking, what you would see is more of everything else, but not the mountain. So I've talked too much, therefore I must drop some poems. The woodpecker keeps returning. The woodpecker keeps returning to drill the house wall. Put a pie plate over one place, he chooses another. There is nothing good to eat there. He has found in the house a resonant billboard to post his intentions, his voluble strength as provider. But where is the female he drums for? Where? I ask this, who am myself the ruined siding, the handsome red-capped bird, the missing mate. So aside from the essays in this book, there's another series of poems I call Pebbles, which are very short. And they were written as discrete poems, but I couldn't see wasting that many trees. And so in the book, they're all put together as a series of 17 pebbles. I'm not going to read you all 17 of them, but I'll give you a little sampling, and then we are 2 poems from the end. These are strange little poems. They're not really finished until you suck on the pebble for a minute and decide whether you can get anything out of it or perhaps not. After Degas. The woman who will soon take a lover shaves her legs in the bath, considering. Would knowing or not knowing she does this please him more? Ecstasy, Czechoslovakia, 1933, and Ecstasy is the title of Hedy Lamarr's first movie, so this is a true story. The actress was only 17, and so the director arranged to have her pricked lightly with pins at the needed moments. Good, somebody sucked on the pedal. They're not all funny. I'm not saying, don't. The complaint. I do not like his most recent book, One Master Said of Another. It compels weeping. Character and life. The young novelist held underwater the head of the character in his book he loved best. In the book, and as he wrote, he counted until he was sure it was finished. Lemon. The grated lemon rind bitters the oil it steeps in. A wanted flavor. Like the moment in love, when one lover knows the other could do anything now wanted, yet does not. Tool use in animals. For a long time it was thought the birds were warning, "Panther, panther." Then someone understood. The birds were scavengers. The cry was, "Human, human." Global warming. When his ship first came to Australia, Cook wrote, the natives continued fishing without looking up, unable, it seems, to fear what was too large to be comprehended. Sentence. The body of a starving horse cannot forget the size it was born to. And the last of these, to sneezing. Pure master of all our losses, dissolver of self and its seals, we bow before you as newspaper bows to the match. Everybody is perfectly without a sense of self when they're sneezing. Okay. Instant, glimpsable only for an instant. Moment, moment, moment. Equal inside you moment, the velocitous mountains and cities rising and falling, songs of children, iridescence even of beetles. It is not you the locust can strip of all leaf. Untouchable green at the center, the wolf too lopes past you and through you as he eats. Insult to mourn you, you who mourn no one, unable. Without transformation, yours the role of the chorus, to whom nothing happens. The living step forward, choosing to enter, to lose. I, who am made of you only, speak these words against your unmasterable instruction. A knife cannot cut itself open, yet you ask me both to be you and to know you. And the final poem. This book is called After. It's after a number of things, but many people who I knew died during the years that it was written. So there are a lot of overt and implicit elegies in the book. It was like this, you were happy. It was like this, you were happy, then you were sad, then happy again, then not. It went on. You were innocent or you were guilty. Actions were taken or not. At times you spoke, at other times you were silent. Mostly, it seems, you were silent. What could you say? Now it is almost over. Like a lover, your life bends down and kisses your life. It does this not in forgiveness. Between you, there is nothing to forgive, but with the simple nod of a baker at the moment he sees the bread is finished with transformation. Eating, too, is a thing now only for others. It doesn't matter what they will make of you or your days. They will be wrong. They will miss the wrong woman, miss the wrong man. All the stories they tell will be tales of their own invention. Your story was this. You were happy, then you were sad. You slept, you awakened. Sometimes you ate roasted chestnuts, sometimes persimmons. Thank you.